The Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium presents Gabriella Gutiérrez y Muhs and Heidi McGurrin, recorded live via Zoom on January 10th, 2021.
Welcome to the January reading, January 2021 reading of the Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium. This is our 10th Zoom-based meeting as we continue to shelter in place from the coronavirus pandemic and here in Monterey County lockdown, which has just been extended indefinitely. All of this as we deal with the stress and the strain of the sedition and insurrection in Washington last week, the pandemic, our damaged economy, and the prospect out here in California of drought returning, and as we brace ourselves for the coming days between now and January 20th. If you find yourself occupied by and present in the narrative of this past week in these times, whether through what you hear this afternoon or otherwise, we invite you to step back a bit. Leave the daily news cycle for a while. Do so with a viewpoint that comes from looking at the world through a lens shaped and sharpened by poetry. Put singular and sometimes lonely concerns aside for a while and enjoy the community of outstanding poetry brought to you by the Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium. The consortium, as some of you know, is an affiliation of poets in the Monterey Bay area and has been presenting readings for many years, carrying on the tradition established by the former local chapter of the National Writers Union back in the 1980s and 90s. And the dean and driving force behind the consortium is John Lowy, who was also the dean and the driving force for the NWU readings. The consortium is on Facebook at Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium. You can go on there and see pictures of our various readings, announcements as to when the YouTube links go up, and also contributed as to the upcoming readings. And as I mentioned, we have our own YouTube channel. I won't give you the URL, but you can simply Google it, YouTube Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium. And I do urge you to subscribe, become a subscriber. Today, we're going to enjoy poetry from two outstanding and gifted poets, Gabriella Gutiérrez y Muhs and Heidi McGurrin, who are making return appearances with us. And each of our poets will read and present for 20 to 25 minutes. So it's going to be a wonderful afternoon. I'd invite you to sit back, enjoy a cup of coffee or tea, a snack if you have one, or if you're back east, I guess maybe it's getting close to dinner time. Have a glass of wine and listen to some fine poetry. We're in for a great afternoon. So let's move on now. Our first reader is a poet, as I mentioned, that we've had with us before, Gabriella Gutiérrez y Muhs. Dr. Gabriella is a polylingual poet, critic, and cultural worker. She's the author, editor of 9 books of poetry, criticism, and culture, and multiple articles, encyclopedia entries, opinion pieces, as well as 2 forthcoming children's books. Okay. She received her MA and PhD from Stanford University. She is first editor of Presumed Incompetent, The Intersections of Race and Class for Women in Academia, and is the single editor of various other books on Chicana criticism through the University of Arizona Press. She also authored the published and forthcoming poetry collections, The Runaway Poems with Finishing Line Press, and How Many Indians Can We Be? And Poet is Not Poeta. She's the author of A Most Improbable Life and The Plastic Book. She's prolific, she's a terrific poet, and so now we get to enjoy her. Gabriella, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I first want to thank all of you, Jennifer Legier, of course, my high school teacher, John Lowy. I don't see him today, but I love him. And of course, Robert, thank you for doing this. And I'm so thrilled to have 2 of my muses here, Shirley Flores Munoz, who's a professor at Cabrillo College, and of course, Patrice Vecchione, who's been feeding me all these years. I want to begin with an excerpt from a poet that I thought you would all like to hear from. This collection is a new collection. I've never read from it, so you are the first to hear. It's called Love is Almost Amor. Carrying water, eating fire, bending word metals, and blowing paper winds. And I will try to read one of those. I will always be a Central Coast woman. This poem is, this excerpt is by Netzahualcoyotl, who lived from 1402 to 1472. He's a pre-Columbian poet. I will create a work of art. I am a poet, and my song will endure on earth. I will be remembered for my songs. My flowers will not perish. My songs will never cease. I, the poet, raise them up, fragrant golden blooms. And that's for all of you beautiful poets. I wouldn't be able to continue existing in this horrible situations that we're living through right now without all my poetry communities. I just thank you so much for including me in this also. And I will just read, it's 2:18. I believe I began 2 minutes ago or 1 minute ago. I will read for 20 minutes. And this first poem is Where the Birds Sing, Donde Cantan los Pájaros. Always go where the birds sing. Even the crows will give. The cows will lend their bodies graciously as bird rugs. That ray of light that comes through the glass door is a sign of the future. No lo desprecies. Don't disdain it. I can think of a few songs with tears. And although we prefer laughs, I think of them in Spanish as tears are not so tragic. In Spanish, our Muslim backgrounds, our pre-Columbian memories know that tears are a gift for Allah and all the other gods. Yes, the white noise in my head is always a sad Mexican song. I am a believer. I believe in birds, songs, cows, crows, and tears. Second poem is Comelumbre. And this is, I've never thought about this period of my life, but I recently finished a memoir. This is when we lived in the winters, we lived in Juarez, across the border from El Paso, although we were all born in the United States because we were migrant farm workers and we could not afford to live in Watsonville, and they would kick us out of the migrant camps. So I've been reflecting on this period, and this is Fire Eater. It's you will hear it. The children eating fire in front of a street light on Avenida Juarez in Juarez is one of the things I remember about my childhood. How I admired them, wanted to learn to swallow fire, to be independent like them, old and mature at a young age, unafraid and unscathed, with the thick skin of abject nothingness. I wanted to bring money home like them, empowered by work. So superior to me, how I loved them and their ratty clothes, their exaggerated smiles for the tourists, their ingenuity for survival, their spirits of Jesus Christ. I remember the courageous goings and comings of mother and I, the zoo we took my grandmother Mama Kika to visit across the line when in her 80s, she came to care for mom and my dead baby brother. I remember the Plaza de los Lagartos downtown El Paso, where my mother took everyone to see the carnivorous alligators that made her feel alive. And all the people she took to El Paso to visit the zoo. But in reality, to El Hospital San Jose, where her nun friends, compassionate experts on poor women, would get the doctors to see, diagnose, send home with physical prescriptions they often could not buy, the women to Juarez to die. or not so soon. To the one-room home in a vecindad where mom had found them space around the corner from our house where they would come to watch TV. We were their living room, their kitchen, their patio, their entertainment, their garage. My mother's richness got them credit at the corner store where Alvina gave a discount to all the poor while her husband Felipe worked as a mechanic in a factory in Chicago, lived in a small room and sent her his check every other week to upkeep the store, support the twins, feed the neighbors, and the other two crazy teenagers. Don Felipe, the serious man we barely knew, she barely knew, who only visited every 2 years. The lonely, faraway man we all loved because he made my mother rich. Two tranvías, the buses that use electricity, no gas, my mom would say, tricking her cousin to go with her to see a doctor that could tell her about her cancer. She wanted to think she was bewitched instead. At least Rosa, Pedro Chico, Pedro Grande, and she would not have to work so hard for medicine. The third poem is De vez en cuando, now and then. Now and then I listen to a horse's neigh, knowing it is you, Mama, reaching out, responding, knitting a long, loud, cheerful prayer for us, a saran-wrap blessing that mitigates our loss through a horse's body. On my altar, your first boyfriend, Wenceslao, stands next to a white horse, looking straight at the future. In that picture, on the altar we made for you, he remains with you. And this is a poem for all the poets. This is Poet is not Poeta. The poet wailed in English, sang in Spanish. The poem had been walking towards her for a lifetime. It was at the cusp of her life, at the tip of her tongues. It had stopped her from killing herself, the poem. The poem had been the hand that held her voice into regurgitation, let her know that antidepressants could be words on a paper lined up like pills on a table. The poem could be songs and rhythms. It could be hands pulling out daggers. It could be smells soothing her childhood lullaby into loving herself. In the poem, homophobia was absent, acceptance present. The poem normalized her, multiplied her, added to her languages and pauses. The poem was her body, her voice, her triangulations and aspirations, her exclamations, the memorizations of who she aspired to be. Like she, the poem was free. The poem was out. The poem was the blank wall of her future, the pet under her feet, the love. She had never looked so beautiful. Given herself permission to speak. The poem was a recitation of her to her. The poem was the shelf of words of her imagination. It was a utopia, a bell. This is, of course, I always think of my mother and all those women who don't write poems with ink, but they write poems with their bodies. This is called Beyond Countenance. Every pancake a page, every tortilla warmed, fully cooked on both faces, a page. Or in Our Father, you cooked as if the rosary had to be prayed by breakfast. Every sandwich, loading and unloading laundry, a page. every ride for the young men, a page or a chapter illustrated with hugs, every day of cleanup, every load, a thought gone, a sentence spelled. Yet you wrote so many novels, swerved in soup bowls, fideo, caldo, pozole, pipián, frijoles de la olla. And this is a sexy poem. I always like to to give people a sexy poem in every one of my readings. This is called Exhibitions. On lockdown, oops, they keep chiming. On lockdown, I anticipate the disappearance of my heart. You indicated an educational tour around my body would lessen the inexactness of your touch. Go ahead, name the flower of my clitoris in a picture. Let your retina ingest the petals like a Georgia O'Keeffe or a Frida Kahlo. Let my picture empty you of your languages, spill the colors of your tongue on my poetic rose. You are my museum, my Louvre, Jeu de Paume, Castillo de Chapultepec, Mam, Mum, Sam. Tour the traveling tourist of your American soul, of your Mexican soul, of your German soul, of your indigenous soul, in the Bible of my moans. Go ahead, I am your museum. You are mine. Inhale. Love is not amor. You cannot turn amor into Roma with stairways to paintings in ceilings on windows. Love can turn butterflies into spirits on Tuesday, return on Wednesday and make you do the floors to heaven, play the piano, steal your mind to feed others, your brain sauteed like a cow's in La Touraine with a simple phrase, love is not amor. 4 letters can save you from dying, but I don't love my shoes, it is not amor. Love gravitates on sidewalks, fries itself into food. Sweat converts to milk in its name. Love is a vehicle unknown to those who cannot spell hard work and endless jouissance. Not the one that reaches your love-making orchids, but the jouissance of the brain, the please read me that poem again in 3 languages, or you might call them lifetimes, because when you wake up in the middle of the night from love, your hair is gray and you don't care. You go back to sleep in the hammock that is resignation, the softest hammock of all. You flower your gifts into addition. And it's 2:30. What time did I say I began? Do I still have time?
Yes, of course, Gabriella. Got at least 10 minutes or more.
Clapping in sign language. The trip to equity lasts a lifetime. Equality withheld. Cows are more important than pigs, and pigs overshadow chicken, vegetables left out. So many miles of words in Braille we can decipher, and languages not in the dictionary. We need to learn to see before we see, to hear before they speak, to speak with our hands. Weeding takes perfection. Clapping in sign language is not dancing Charleston. Language cannot say. I could not say that every language possesses a desire. In Albanian, you do not deserve. You cannot deserve what the language cannot say. In English, there is no word for wearing something for the first time, or a link that connects you to someone who has your namesake does not hug. Whereas in Spanish, that person is your spiritual brother, a tocaya. Whistling is not acceptable in English, but it is a long-awaited bird song in Spanish. In French, there are so many possibilities for worth. Vaut. Je voudrais écrire ce qui resterait dans une bibliothèque pour les aveugles de l'âme. But we know not languages until we sleep in India. We have been sense limited until our souls become polyglots. Bending word metals. If all the words were made of metal, imagine how easily they would bend. Instead, when a person hates you and writes wetback on your cuaderno in the 3rd grade, and you think they are being nice, and you give them a caramelo because having grown in very hot weather, you want to be a wetback all summer. And you are a wetback, a beaner, a mojada, a pocha, a fronteriza, a chicana, a gringada, a spick. You are content. Paper winds. You sent me the wind when I did not need it. Like paper besos, it lasts forever, but unlike paper kisses, it does not fly alone. Send me the thunder of your love, the thunder of your hate. Send me your unfathomable, unfathomable wishes. I will make them fly. Make something edible. Cradle it in your diary. Nurse the hot wishes with my fan. They will get a turn to become like dough rising in the oven. To fly in compass with the sound of fish under the water. Odors from a perfectly cooked pozole. Love without words. Touch without hands. Music without instruments. A taste of a reconciled relative. And I wrote this, La niña no quiere piña. The girl doesn't want pineapple, because I was remembering my mom and how much I wanted a little cone with pineapple that they sold downtown Juarez, but she didn't have any money to buy it. And I did my temper tantrum and sat in the corner and, I want piña, quiero piña. And this man came out of nowhere, and he had bought it for me, of course. But I didn't think my mom, he was right behind her, would let me take it. And she was explaining to me how she didn't have money to buy the threads she needed and my pineapple. So this is where this, it's also, it rhymes. So, and I think after this, I'd like to take some questions because I'll have a couple of minutes. In case there's something, I almost translated the French. I didn't know if some of you didn't understand the French in the previous poem, but then I thought, well, maybe they do, maybe they all speak French. So I'll take some questions after this. La niña no quiere piña. Don't send me the pineapple you want for your daughter, the coconut you drink for your baby's milk, the melon you desire to make your agua fresca. With your love, water me, fertilize me, sell me the dirt so I can grow. Imaginary pineapples, coconuts in my skin, and drink your agua fresca in my mind. That will keep me alive, knowing you know how to cut a pineapple, make tepache with its skin. The thought of the sweet milk your baby drinks and the agua fresca you taught me to make. Imaginary pineapples, coconuts in my skin, and drink your agua fresca in my mind. That will keep me alive, knowing you know how to cut a pineapple. And I think I left out the end, but I also was thinking of all those babies, all those children on the border. And I'm just thinking of how we see them sometimes as empty as these little vessels that are gonna, if we accept them in the States, gonna come and take our money and take what we have here. But they also have all this richness to give us, right? Because
Absolutely.
they know how to choose and how to cut pineapple. Okay, I have like, I think 2 minutes. So if you have, that's my reading.
Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you so much. And if folks do have questions, please unmute. And I would like to say, you know, the people that you were referring to, I liked the French and the phrase les aveugles de l'âme, you know, the blind of the soul. It's beautifully said in that language, and no doubt in Spanish as well. And the people who are locking up the little babies and all of that, they are blind in their souls. It was a beautiful reading. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions or comments? Gabriella is a professor at Seattle University, so she's very well adept at working with you with questions and answers. So if you have any questions, please unmute and go ahead and ask them.
Well, thank you, Gabriella. I enjoyed your poetry. It's so beautiful, and your imagery is just so capturing. I find you a delight as a reader, writer, because you speak from many vantage points, linguistic vantage points, geographical vantage points, even subject positions. So I appreciate that. And I'd like to know how your mother's passing has influenced your writing.
Well, when your mother dies, you realize how much she gave you, right? And can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. But it's not just one mother. I've recently written a list, and I have a poem of all my mothers, because I think we don't often talk about all these other mothers that mothered us into being who we are. But definitely, when the closest person to you dies, it takes you back to the formation of your soul, right? Thank you, Shirley. That's wonderful commentary. And there was someone else who I saw their lips moving.
I think
Yes?
Lisa is unmuted.
Yes, I am. I just wanted to thank you. I love the way you use the Spanish and integrate it so nicely so that it's easy to understand. I do speak Spanish, but I often struggle with finding the right word. And I just really enjoyed your reading, and I look forward to finding you elsewhere so that I can read more of your work.
Thank you.
You spoke, Gabriella, at the beginning about poets being remembered for their songs, the poet raising up flowering golden blooms. And that's what you gave us today, flowering golden blooms.
Thank you.
I love the line, tears are a gift, which is so true. And poet is not poeta. That is so true. And then segued into all the women who write poems with their bodies, novels served in soup bowls. That's how they express their art. It was wonderful to hear and see all of this. And yes, you're up there in the Northwest, but you are truly from the Central Coast. And we miss you and love you. And it's wonderful to have you back here with us, albeit electronically.
Isn't it wonderful to have Zoom? And I really look forward to Heidi's reading today. And I'm so happy to be part of this community. Thanks, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriella. And the magic continues with our next poet, Heidi McGurrin. Heidi is an imaginative writer, photographer, and painter. She graduated from the Foxcroft School in Middleburg, Virginia, a number of the alumni of which are here with us today. She attended Finch College in New York City and the California School of Fine Arts, which is now the San Francisco Art Institute. In 1998, I remember this, Heidi was honored by Congressman Sam Farr, who presented her Cuban photography exhibition on Capitol Hill. And she read to the Congress her poem, First Impressions of Havana. Her book, Havana Dream, is on Blurb. I have it. It's a wonderful book. Heidi has traveled in Inca and Mayan lands of Peru and Bolivia and Guatemala, and weaves her stories into her art, which is also inspired by her traveling in Cuba, Haiti, Brazil,
Check the
Mexico,
door.
and Chile. Some of Heidi's story, which is she's a fascinating person with a wonderful story. Some of her story is going to be included in the documentary film, The Westerfield House of Legends, which Matt Alavi is directing. Heidi, when's that coming out?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm waiting to.
Okay, well, I've heard, and some of us have heard, little anecdotes and bits and pieces of life in the Westerfield house. So that film, when it does come out, is going to be really wonderful. Heidi has also photographed and written stories about her Mexico working trips with Los Médicos Voladores, the flying doctors. And as I say, she has lived and lives a wonderful life. Now she's going to share some of her poetry with us. So
Can you bring
Heidi,
in the groceries?
excuse me?
What?
Someone said something, but I didn't quite catch that.
Someone needs to mute. It was
Yeah.
not pertinent to our situation.
Something about groceries. I guess that's not us. All right. So Heidi, without further ado, thank you so much for being with us, and over to you.
I'd like to thank Gabriella for a beautiful, beautiful reading. And it makes me want to cry. Thank you, John Lowy. Thank you, Bob Nielsen. Thank you, Jennifer Lagier, for letting me do this reading today. And thank you for all my friends that showed up. I'm just going to read one poem after another, and please tell me when to stop, Bob.
Okay.
I tried my best. I weeded a lot out, but here we go. This was a
I'll
dream.
give you, Heidi, excuse me, I'll give you a high sign at 5 minutes, so you can adjust the tempo and content if you'd like to at that point.
My dream. Dark streets, Market Street, old San Francisco in the old days. Cold night, huge high buildings, streets jammed with people, cold, hungry. I'm walking with the tall staff, my backdrop pole for my camera work, staying in the lighter places as much as I can, feeling the danger and the sadness. I notice my pole that I'm using as a cane has a white top, but I am not blind. I have my wool overcoat on. I have my Navajo jewelry on, and I take my bracelets off my arm and put them in my pocket. I drop my pole and have to go back for it. All along, bird food, wood. On the left are big old churches, makeshift tents. Old, sweet, heavy-set ladies sitting in chairs with long tables covered with all kinds of crutches and limbs and every kind of need a handicapped person would have. These women seem happy talking to old men. They are enjoying each other. They, the ladies, are all blind. I'm walking and tripping over the crutches that have spread out over the sidewalk. I'm trying to help put them back along the edge. I leave my staff pole again in the middle of the crutches and I go back for it. I'm hurrying to meet Anna. No idea where. Somewhere in my head, I'm always imagining I'm being chased by a ghost. It, if questioned, has a time color of ashes fading into powder blue. Then suddenly that Prussian blue and moonlight. Midnight was a darker brew. Street shone with spattering of car lights. The coconut juice vendor grinding away in the old held up by love shack, served through a tiny window. in the pitch dark, little tiny cups full of fresh pressed cold juice. There, the nectar had a forever effect, like the fast swing on the sudden stop on a high mountain, to go into the thickness and grab onto a rope and a prayer. Throw your legs out into nowhere, and your mind somehow so excited and thirsting, the thrill of it, the nerves, and the drop feeling into no idea where, no idea where. The land of feelings and animal size, catnaps and memories. The curtain. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Rain is pouring down through the window panes. Some drops like rivers of wonder. Some wind rustles through cracks from the roof and billows the curtains, ruffling the velvets, holding them down. Big Sur dancing in the rain, hiding the movement of the man behind the curtain. Noises and crashing cymbals startle me. A violin escapes the young girl's grasp. An imaginary audience gasps. A fluttering of hummingbirds floods my eye like clouds of perfume. She was a beauty of desire. Her delight in her eyes sparkled as her fingernails of an old soul held onto the strings of destiny that fell from some place high above. Twisting in the wind and dancing in the theater of mysterious delight, the man behind the curtain played her like a puppet master. He held the cards. The curtain was his disguise. Only his laughter haunted me. Piano shoes. She sat young and emotional in front of the piano, her grandmother's baby grand, with Mason Hamlin scripted in golden letters etched across the smooth wood. She remembered like it was yesterday. Her shoes felt slippery on her feet. She thought of the smoothness of the satin soft feeling cloth when her fingers slipped them over her stocking toes. Earlier, she was distracted. The cool air breezed through open windows of lattice glass, leading into the back tiled garden with memories floating through her mind of the magnificent olive tree, must have been over 100 years old. The birds' songs curled her curiosity. She was lonely sitting there, twisting her feet on the piano pedals, not sure which one was for what as her feet danced back and forth, teasing the notes her fingers struck on the soft ivory keys with soft and long depths of sound, each one with own peculiarities. She kept straying through imagery of antique mirrors surrounding her, sounds echoing up into high ceilings where notes from her fingers seemed to float into the rafters and stay, as long as her feet touched the pedals in a meaningful way. Her mother was upstairs. She could hear her movements. Now she felt sad. She seemed to play sad melodies. Pavan was one that moved her. In her head, she imagined her mother in a fit, listening as she seemed to play the mournful notes over and over. Ray Charles, Born to Lose, was one song, and the songs of the Auvergne. Paul Blais' Touch so moved her young childhood. She imagined mountaintops of a magical place somewhere far away, the air's fresh breezes, the spring light in her mind, her hands dancing and free. Her pretty shoes responded when suddenly the wind interrupted her reverie as the music pages began to blow and get ruffled, slipping off their narrow shelf above her hands faster than she could grab them, losing her peace and creating a silence unknown before. Chiapas. Icy blue pales the cold air as the fire begins to crackle in the room that I dare to put my toe into first thing to get the energy stirring. Push, push. Don't think about it, I say to myself as I head for coffee and then into the cold air for wood logs. my fingertips finding whatever seems to be what will last the longest until I can go down the garden path to the wood pile and bring up another day's warmth. Thinking about Zinicantan, the tiny secret place in Chiapas, where Faith was detained for painting the church. So private, no one can imagine unless they have felt the mystery in the air of the need to keep the secret, the privacy, the inner peace of keeping private what is one's own. So high, so old, so cold, the tiny crosses sprinkled on the rooftops against the mountain tip of the small village of the indigenous, where the flowers grow that make life flow, where brings the special mystery to the old ways, a soft weaving of feelings that stir your heart, and you cannot tell anyone about it because there are no words, and most of what you have learned in your life from others has no place. Before the light touches my sleepy eyes, I go deep for moments trying to catch the remnants of my dreams, line them up as a patchwork gathering of hard and soft, places of familiar and many new, wondrous and disturbing sometimes, not unlike a river whose flow rushes over endless rocks, some of jade, some of ivory, if caught by the sunlight. Carnelian roughs its colors near slippery green mosses. Only dragonflies flutter their wings nearby. Water slippery like my dream flows, drag and twist and brighten my sleep, toss me around while my arms lie still and my eyes flutter and the passing ships in the night. I lay in my pillows, shut-eyed, traveling back in time. My wings seem to be made of feathery flesh. Their bones are light, tired from the long nights, and heavy from carrying the stardust accumulated from years of waiting, watching, listening, caring. Zillions of stars watch over me while I sleep, and troubles and concerns from worldly awareness seem to trick their madness into liquids of dissolve and disappear into clouds of soft pillows, holding me gently on my journey to inside myself. Warrior and dancer. To write is to feel again, to refresh memories long forgotten, often deep down, of golden sparkles from the sun, shining off the soft curve of a stallion's back, the rusty rich gleaming that hints of gold running like honey as my eyes catch the wandering flow of the endless beauty, as light bounces and careens like a mirror catching the sunlight. The green pastures curve up and around the voluminous trees whose branches are strong and stretch with grace, creating shelter and magical theaters for warrior and dancer to rush through, their silhouettes running behind the soft seeming branches that curve and twist above the fresh meadows they run through. Their bodies gleam in the fresh light of morning. Warrior pure white as pearls can be, long-legged and high-spirited, brave and fearful, as dancer rushes past in curious movement, his golden burnt sienna color inviting your eyes to watch beauty in full force. As he prances past carrots and oats toward the newly opened gate, up the mountain paths toward the pastures of heaven above, where he and warrior both found openings in the fences to wander through and discover young babies, old mares, geldings of familiar ancestry running loose around the luscious green rolling hills, whose curves reveal soft carpets of tiny, tiny purple and blue star-like flowers that keep on blooming, not bothered by lively prancing horse hoofs, often ears back with sudden nips and bites, legs stretching out in sudden kicks, dramatic antics, jealous feelings, and mouths showing teeth open and ready. But all's quiet once again when they settle and find another bucket with oats and carrots. They rush and push and swerve in and out of one another and me who moves cautiously between them, my arms pushing against their moving, heated bodies. 12 excited horses rushing, their bodies' energy pulling me up the mountain, including me in their feverish drama, and I filling myself with their passion and grace. The clouds watch from the blue above and hold their raindrops inside puffy, wandering, blown by the winds, clouds of white and soft grays, dark grays of possibility. Warrior, looking down over a high ledge of a bridge railing, way down beneath in the blue, green, swirling water of the ocean current, I saw what looked like the silhouette of a white horse laying on his side, caught in a tide pool, floating in the sea. Worried and anxious, I seemed to float, to return to see a gathering of long fingers in the misty air, reach out to the horse, white wisps like a feather drawing, and pick up pieces of the fragile creature with fingertips raised like chopsticks, flipping the tissue light strings of shredded ribbons unknown out into the atmosphere. Borderlands. Flying low in a Cessna, I remember low, low, over the sparkling blue sea of Cortez, torturous, rocky beasts, mountains of treacherous, forbidden, hot, snake-grilled, cactus lands, rattlers. Night stars are not twinkling here now. They were. Guards of paid pockets haunt the earth and leave their feelings behind, if there were any. Watching, watching, dried leftover rattlesnakes' delight, amongst others, who lay in thorns of horror as the pilgrimage continues towards cages of agony. Who would have known? Who could tell them? Huge lands of no communication, no way to get any information, just terror deep inside the chests of terrorized peoples, feeling unwanted, chased, frightened. Food scraps may be unavailable, water maybe not. El Norte, take a look. Children, mamas, papas, abuelitas, abuelitos, souls of humanity, those of innocence, kindness, generosity, all locked up and separated, unknown before darkness. No way to know they travel on sore feet, tops of screaming trains through blackness of tunnels, winds of blistering heat, holding on so tight to one another. Who has been to the deep desert of Mexico? Who has seen the death there? Now, like a canteen stuffed with frogs, dying slow deaths, the border men, armed with the power of the redhead, paid by the redhead, given bullets of madness to protect his precious golden floors, lined with the sweat of other men's toils. His children, pointed heads and noses of snobbery, killers of lions, remind of the privilege and squished tight lips of faces taught their language in private boarding schools. Those places your parents sent you to when they'd had it. Whips and crops of the behavior, or else the blonde woman on the news, watch the curl of her lips. She has a stink in her mind that twists lies out of her pencil-thin mouth. Who teaches her? Who taught her? Encourages her? Where do they find these people that hate and lay in cruelty beds of shame? How can she say she's been there? Did she wear rose-colored glasses? Her deep prejudices like a smothering perfume steaming off her sweat of lies, of hideous, vicious lies. Is the train of migrants in cages and men telling them they need a conductor any different than what we know now of the Holocaust, of Manzanar? What country are we living in now? Children and families are crying in anguish, terrible pain. Some soon will be dying. And who can prevent this reality from happening? Women are being caught up in ICE prisons, separated from their children, sterilized against their will, and deported without their children. Some have lived in this country for many years. Things are moving so quickly. Freedoms seem to be racing towards the drains of inhumanity, And where are the voices of real men? Who are these creeps who have managed to buy their way into positions of privilege, swinging their bats of hatred? What were they fed? And now people are frightened. Maybe this red-haired man needs to have his humanity checked. He is not alone in this. When will this turn around? How can this be happening in our country that we love and feel the deep pain of the past happenings? We hope we're being healed. Songs of freedom I hear in my sleep, cry of the lonely, separated children, their parents' heartache, the unknown. Tear your heart out of its comfort place and help these sad souls in any way you can. Write, sing, shout it out. No, stop this madness.
You believing still to this day? I think I've programmed myself enough where each week is like a year in my life. And so Monday you feel horrible, Tuesday you feel horrible, but
Heidi, hold on for a sec, please.
I've programmed and demanded on myself that I have forgotten.
That was somebody who just joined us. Sorry about that. We'll cut that out of the video. Sorry to interrupt you. And that poem, anyway, you had brought to a conclusion, hadn't you? Okay. All right, Heidi, 5 more minutes, so please go ahead.
Prayers for lost dreams, artists gathering in darkness. Sadness, young, dancing, feeling safe for moments, underground gatherings, taking chances, innocence and beauty, loved ones, refugees from time in this crazy world, need to express the mystic, to love in the shadows, to cry together for lost loves. Artists gathering in darkness then, now, when, where? I remember dancing behind secret doors in North Beach, New York, the Fillmore, the Art Institute, angels taking chances, and often we suffer, dancing and crying and weaving our dreams into smoke. Love remains curled in the ashes of remembrance, sifting the memories of joy into sorrow. Where have all our children gone when they have felt abandoned? You, me, all those newfound families woven together like a tapestry. Love knows no boundaries to dance into oblivion. Poof, we are the lucky survivors in this precarious world. Send love and prayers, light candles of forgiveness, hear songs we never heard before. Give love more. Don't you remember twirling in strange magical places by the sea, underground, high away from the maddening crowds? Ribbons flying of forgiveness, children feeling unwanted, needing refuge, beautiful souls, young, gifted, innocent, crying together now, birds of a feather, we. Mountains tumble and burn, their clothing ripped off their backs like storms of rocks pouring out of the heavens. Never expected or invited, another searching land unknown or welcoming. They seek the treasure of poetry places, though they are not poets. They want to grab and steal and push, 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 creating havoc. Are they so often innocent tourists who tromp the coast and ruin the beauty, to the access to the beauty they seek? Outsiders not aware or caring, clueless about what the neighbors mean, wearing badges on their rigid jackets, their knowledge, their learned of decision making. A danger and an unwelcome advance onto the sacred land, once shared by peaceful people seeking refuge from them in the first place. Another takeover of our country, no different to what we sing today. History repeats itself on the backs of others, bearing the sacred in any way they can. They do not care, they do not even know. Let them walk barefoot, plant a garden, feed animals. They would perish. And here's a happier one.
Okay, one more, Heidi. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Great.
Remembering sign parties, early days at Nepenthe. The moon shone brightly over the mountain ridge, flooding the cinnabar terrace above the sea. The old rusty chandelier, peppered with soft orangey red lights, danced in the firelight, whose warmth and flames lit up the dancers. Children and creative souls of all ages, shapes, and thirsts, hungry for passage into the otherwhere. Dreams of inner searchings found each dreamer in another paradise, yearning for freedom, spinning around in the night air, barefoot and hair flying, to musical symphonies, mysterious and magical, whose sounds transported each soul into another world, previously just a little beyond reach. Rattlesnake grasses blew wild near old, tall, dark cypresses. Golden hills rolled under our feet. Blue waters sparkled below, and the moonlight caught every nuance in its path. I remember in the glow of the night, each face circling a huge, varnished, polished, round, inviting table, covered with every kind of colorful cake imaginable, large and round, fat and tall, layers of delicious homemade by loving hands, big sir ladies, women, smothered with colorful frostings that sparkled in the glow of it seems now. Zillions of candles whose tiny lights throw warm, comforting sweetness up into the faces of the astrological signs of each guest as they sat in front of each cake representing their birthday sign. My Aunt Madeleine Lolly was there. She sat in front of many lit dancing sparklers, throwing sparks, lighting her smile and her cinnabar brooch, her dancing blue eyes. I, knowing this night was created deep inside herself, this place, Nepenthe, her isle of forgetfulness, was born deep inside of her, and I, her secret admirer, carried her secrets inside of me, and it was until it was time for my wings to fly too. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Heidi. Yes,
Wow.
the special that special wonder of Nepenthe. Just amazing. Well, thank you so much, Heidi. I was struck by your poem Borderland, with its going into the discussion and the presentation of the terror and the horror, and your lines about men and their positions of privilege. And then the question with regard to the blonde newscaster, where do they find these people who hate? And it brought to mind the image I recall of when the First Lady boarded the helicopter to go to visit the border. She was wearing a jacket, and emblazoned on the back was something like, "Ask me if I care." Where do they find these people is a question, and it fit for me, Heidi, with one of your first poems that you read for us, the laughter of the man behind the curtain haunting us, because we are haunted by that laughter, this behavior, this lack of care. But you gave us balance. I love the image of the horses getting out and escaping up into the pastures of heaven, and enjoying themselves. And then your line of holding me gently in my journey to inside myself. That's what you did with us today. And so thank you. Want to thank you for your time. Thank you both, Heidi and Gabriella. It's been a wonderful afternoon. I think we were able to get away for a little while and just enjoy time together with wonderful poetry. Our next reading, we keep
Sorry,
the
was
magic
it you at
going.
the piano, Heidi?
What?
Was it you at the piano with the papers flying?
Yeah.
Yeah, figured as much. Up there in San Francisco and Pacific Heights. Huh? Yeah. Well, we keep the magic rolling. Next reading is February 14, Valentine's Day. What a Valentine we'll have. Our two readers will be Jennifer Legier, who's here with us today, and Mary Kay Rummel. If you'd like more information about the consortium and what we do, you can call John Lowy. I have his phone number. You can email me. And I would ask you to please stay tuned and stay in touch via our YouTube channel. which, as I said, is Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium on YouTube. Please subscribe. And also, we do have a Facebook page. You can sign up for that and receive announcements and news of what we're doing. This has been a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. Now we go back to the reality of things, but I think we are lightened a little bit by what Gabriella and Heidi have given us today. So thank you both. Thank you all for being with us. And I'm going to ask everybody just to give me a big smile. I'm going to see if I can take a nice screenshot selfie of all of us here. And then we'll get that into Facebook. Okay, folks, on 3. 1, 2, 3, big smile. Thank you. Okay.
When is it going to be posted?
It takes up to 3 to 4 weeks to get the thing edited and cleaned and cleared. I don't mean cleared by any people who have to review it, but just getting the bugs out and stuff. Where my grandmother used to say, things improve as they get better. And that's sort of us. We're getting better at this. So as I say, it can take up to 3 or 4 weeks. So I think it was Kate who asked. Please check back. And if you're on the Facebook page, or if you have liked the Facebook page, the announcement will be there. So you can check there from time to time. Okay, any other thoughts or questions? I'm going to ask Heidi and Gabriella to stay on with me a little bit after we're done. And I want to thank all of you for being with us. We had people from Pennsylvania, upstate New York, Massachusetts, and just down the road from me here in Carmel Valley. It's been quite a wonderfully spread audience. Thank you. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heidi.
Yeah, it was so fun to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. It was wonderful.
That was so amazing.